Welcome to MIST and to your induction video. My name is Marta Gonçalves and I'm Deputy Director of Music for MIST, and I'll be guiding you through the first weeks of teaching. At MIST, we believe that high-quality music education should be accessible to every child regardless of their background and life opportunities. We support the schools by providing musical instruments, music tuition delivered by specialists, and also wonderful opportunities to perform and bring the different schools together. Our aim is to roll out the programme to every school in the UK, but with limited funds, we target disadvantaged and challenging schools. These are schools with a higher than average pupil premium, English as an additional language, or special educational needs and disability. Currently, we are expanding to the north of England, in deprived areas such as Oldham and Middlesbrough. As part of our Excellence programme, we run a Saturday music school for the most able musicians in MIST schools. MIST Create, an initiative that supports GCSE and A-level music students with their compositions. The MIST Leadership programme that helps equip our older students with leadership skills. MIST Scholarships. We now have a strong link to the renowned Chatham School of Music in Manchester, and we are hoping to support our most talented and passionate musicians by offering them a scholarship to study there. MIST Voices, for group singing in schools, online resources for singing at home, and support for students who would like to develop their performance skills. We also run the MIST Radley, a residential programme which happens every year in July and is the highlight of the academic year for a lot of our students. In 2018-19, we've had 250 students attending this course. Finally, we have MIST Together as part of our curriculum programme, where 2 or more schools come together for a day of playing, culminating in a performance. Over the years, MIST students have performed at some of the major venues in London, which is always very exciting. Our programme is hinged on having strong peripatetic staff as we are a group tuition model. As a MIST peripatetic teacher, you will help deliver the Andrew Lloyd Webber programme, a key Stage 3 curriculum that is from Year 7 to Year 9. The aim of the Andrew Lloyd Webber programme is to equip students with all the skills they need, both in performance and in music theory, should they decide to further their music education into GCSE level. As an expert in your field, you'll be supporting the classroom teacher in the practical lessons. Next, I'll explain the structure of the lessons and how you can best support your new students. Before you start, you should be given a folder containing the following material: tracking sheets for all your classes, a Kadai rhythm sheet, behaviour charts, and any relevant information from your school. I will go into more detail about all this later on. A standard MIST music lesson includes 2 sections, theory and performance. Some schools are able to offer a 2-period music lesson, while others a single period. You'll be supporting the classroom teacher when all together in the classroom, but once the class breaks up into 2 or more groups, then you're responsible for your own group. There are several things that we as Peris can do to support the classroom teacher. We can help set up the classroom. We should reinforce the rules and expectations in a quiet way, always modelling good behaviour. Reinforce routines. It could be that, for instance, the students were told to come in silence, put their bags under their chairs and open their violin cases by the side, ready to be tuned, so it's important that we reinforce these routines. We can help with tasks such as handing out written work, folders, etc. And also help students complete the Do Now activity on the board if applicable. Now, Do Now activities, they might be called something different depending on the school, are simple tasks set out by the classroom teacher to give students something to work on as soon as they get through the door. Usually these are done in silence while the register takes place. If it's a string class, check with the classroom teacher when the best time is to start tuning. We suggest students should have the violin, viola cases open on the floor ready to be tuned. Parents should also hand out any spare instruments that are needed. Once the classroom teacher finishes the theory part of the lesson, they will then split the class into 2 or more ability groups. Now, it's really important that you keep communicating with the classroom teacher to ensure that the groups are well balanced and that progress is taking place. Once the class is split up into groups, each student should take with them their instrument, their music, any practice books or logbooks that the school might require, and a pen or a pencil. Once you are in a room with your group, you are responsible for their progress as well as behaviour. Make sure you think about how you'd like your classroom to be, and then set out your expectations very clearly in the first lesson. Also, during the first lesson, start to be aware of the group dynamic in terms of behaviour, and at the end of the lesson try to come up with a seating plan that you stick to every week. Obviously, you can always make some small changes throughout the year, but it's important to give students consistency. They actually like to know what to expect in the lessons, and it can help them by following the same structure every week and creating your own routines. Ask the classroom teacher for the students' photos. This will help you immensely in the first few months, and students really appreciate the effort that you've put into learning their names. We will now be looking at the Peri pack in more detail, but before we carry on, it's important to remember that these folders should always be kept at school. You might be holding on to information about students that is confidential. Also, classroom teachers might need access to the information on your tracking sheets. And say if you're absent 1 week, the person who covers for you will have a much easier way to find out exactly what your students are supposed to be doing by looking at your tracking sheets. And that's exactly what I'll explain next. I'll explain how to fill in the tracking sheets and how to use them. This tracking sheet will help you to keep a record of progress, behaviour and homework for your students. You should write your name at the top and which class you're teaching. Then you add the list of students on the left and the date of each lesson at the top of each column. At the start of each group lesson, go through all the names. Usually I write them down in the seating plan order so it's easier to keep track, and check if they all have their equipment, especially music and practice books. Make a note if they don't, and in some schools that's an equipment failure. Always try to have spare copies of the music and practice books so that they leave the room with everything they need for the next lesson. Homework. One option that I often use is to pick 1 or 2 students each week to play through their homework, and you make a note of that on the tracking sheet. For progress, use a plus or a minus. Behaviour, I usually write down the sanctions they received during the lesson, and same with praises or positives, which you'll write under the smiley face on the far right of each column. If you move to the end of the tracking sheet, you will find the homework and notes section. Again, write down the date of the lesson and make a note of their homework as well as any concerns or positive remarks that should be recorded. At the very back of the tracking sheet, you can find space for the seating plan as well as a quick checklist to help you remember the main sections of the lesson. We will now look at how you could structure the group lesson to ensure clarity and consistency for your students. After students are sat or standing according to the seating plan, make sure they have all the equipment they need. Music should be on the music stand and instruments ready to play in position 1, rest position. Briefly describe what the learning objectives are for the lesson. For example, today we'll start by doing our usual call and response warm-up using the notes B, A and G. Remember, B 1 finger, A 2 fingers, G 3 fingers. I will ask 2 of you to play through their homework. That was Falling Leaves from last week. And then we're ready to start our new piece, Sleepless Night from your Vermush books. I would like you to focus on making a really clear sound on your flutes and also separating the notes by using the tip of your tongue, so tonguing every single note in the piece. Pick a warm-up that is accessible and relevant even for the first few weeks of teaching. If it works, stick to it. You might think that it's too easy, but you need something to include and engage everybody right from the start. String classes will start playing scales a lot sooner than winds, but whenever they're ready, please include them in the warm-up as well. For homework checks, we suggest picking 1 or 2 different students each week to play through their homework. Reinforce the idea that it doesn't have to be perfect. Even if it's 1 more bar than last week, that's progress and that's what we're looking for. You can then ask students for feedback, always referring to the assessment criteria. For example, technique, dynamics, articulation, tone quality, etc. Work on the piece by breaking it up into smaller sections and using the practice routine. I will go into more detail about this later on. Try to include a 5-minute plenary at the end of your group lesson where they play through the section they worked on uninterruptedly and perhaps using backing tracks. Don't forget to set some homework. They can write it on their planners or practice books. Small and accessible tasks for the following week work far better than unrealistic expectations. Clean instruments if applicable, pack up and tidy up the room. Take your students with you back to the classroom. Quite often, students don't know how to start their practice or how to structure their practice sessions. This is one of the reasons why we started using a practice routine in all our lessons. Now, this practice routine can be applied to all the repertoire they learn, from the mush books to more advanced pieces. We're now going to apply the practice routine to the flute piece Rumpus from Vermush Flute Book 1. We're going to work on the first line only. As you can see at the top of the slide, the very first step of the practice routine is to say the Kadai sounds. In the bottom right corner, you have the Kadai sounds needed for the entire piece. First line, Kadai sounds, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. T, 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 ta, ta, and again. T, 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 ta, ta. Very good. The next step is to say the note names. At this stage, you can start singing the notes so that they get used to the sound. Most of the time, students will join in with the singing without even talking about it. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. A, A, C, A, C, A. A, A, C, A, C, A. A, A, C, A, C, A, G, A. Very good. Say in mime for wind instruments or say in pizzicato for strings is the third and most important step in the practice routine because it involves a lot more coordination. For winds, sing the notes and mime them on the instruments. For strings, sing the notes and do pizzicato. Again, make sure you're singing the notes so that students join in. The fourth and final step is to play. When students get to this step, the playing is often really successful because of all the building up and structured preparation. Using this process means that we're including everybody. Even if students have forgotten their instruments and don't have a spare instrument for any reason, they can still take part in the lesson. This is the end of your induction video. I hope you found it useful and do not hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions or ideas. Enjoy your teaching.